A rude passenger tried to humiliate me on a plane, but karma took off before we even landed. I've always said you can tell a lot about a person by how they behave on an airplane. You're trapped together, shoulder to shoulder, nowhere to hide. If someone's entitled or rude, it'll show by the time you reach cruising altitude. Unfortunately, I learned that lesson the hard way on my trip from New York to London. My name's Eleanor, 31 female, and I work in marketing. My boyfriend Sebastian, 33 male, is an aerospace engineer. Ironically, he's obsessed with planes. We were flying to London for his sister's wedding, which meant 7 hours across the Atlantic, sitting next to total strangers. Normally, I'd be fine with that. I fly a few times a year for work. But this flight? It became one of those, you wouldn't believe what happened to me stories that make it to Reddit started before we even sat down. Sebastian and I boarded the plane late because of a gate change. The aisle was jammed with people hoisting their luggage like they were in a competition to block everyone else's way. Sebastian had gone ahead to stash our carry-on, so I was maneuvering down the aisle with my personal item and my jacket when I saw my row window seat. 27A, my safe space for the next several hours. Except someone was already sitting there. At first I figured they just made a mistake. A tall woman in her mid-40s was spread out across the entire row middle seat, window seat, and half of mine, talking loudly on her phone in a clipped voice. She was wearing oversized sunglasses inside the plane, mind you, and had a designer tote on her lap like it was a child. "Excuse me," I said politely. "I think you might be in my seat." She glanced up at me like I'd interrupted her at a royal banquet. "What?" "My seat is 27A, I said again. Trying to smile, she looked at the boarding pass in her hand, then back at me. "No, this is 27A. I specifically requested the window seat." I held up my ticket. "It's printed on mine too. Maybe we can check with the flight attendant?" She rolled her eyes so hard I could practically hear it. "Oh, for heaven's sake." By now, other passengers were lined up behind me, trying to get by. The woman sighed dramatically, stood up halfway, and muttered something under her breath about people not understanding premium seat designations. A flight attendant came over, a young man who looked like this wasn't his first day dealing with seat drama. "Everything okay, ladies?" he asked. Before I could answer, the woman pointed at me. "She's trying to take my seat. I paid extra for this." He checked both our tickets and then gave her the kindest fake smile I've ever seen. "Ma'am, your ticket says 27B, that's the middle seat. 27A belongs to her." You'd think that would settle it. You'd think she'd scoot over and let me sit. Instead, she huffed, shoved her tote under the seat, and sat back down without moving over. "Well, I guess I'll sit in the middle, but this is ridiculous," she muttered. Clearly loud enough for me to hear. I awkwardly squeezed past her knees to get to my seat, feeling her eyes on me like I'd just ruined her vacation. The flight attendant mouthed "good luck" as he moved on once seated. I tried to focus on my book and ignore her exaggerated size. She kept elbowing the armrest, accidentally nudging me every couple minutes. I put in my earbuds, but that didn't stop her commentary. "Some people," she muttered, "don't understand how to be polite. Taking someone's spot just to have a view of the clouds." I didn't respond. I just breathed slowly and counted to 10. I could handle 7 hours. I could handle her, or so I thought. Sebastian was sitting a few rows behind me. When he came to check on me before takeoff, she actually tapped him on the arm and said, "Oh, you're with her? Maybe next time you can book her a seat she actually belongs in." That was the first time I saw him visibly bristle. "Excuse me?" But I gave him the "don't start" look, and he walked back to his seat reluctantly. We hadn't even taken off yet, and this woman already made me want to parachute out once we were in the air. The cabin lights dimmed, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd settle down. Boy, I was wrong the moment the seatbelt sign turned off. She fully reclined her seat. Immediately. Not a slow recline. An instant snap backward like she was launching herself into orbit. My tray table shook, and my drink almost spilled. "Sorry," she said flatly. Not even glancing back then, she reached over my tray table to close the window and grabbed her tote from the floor. She plopped it right between her feet, half of which were now in my legroom. Not a confrontational person by nature. I try to let little things go. But her arm kept creeping onto mine, her legs splayed out, her hair spilling over into my lap because she'd decided to toss it back like she owned the airspace around her. I took a deep breath and said, "Could you please move your arm? I don't have much room." She snapped, "Well, I don't either. These seats are tiny." "Yes," I said evenly, "but that doesn't mean you get both armrests." She gave me a thin smile. "Actually, middle seats are entitled to both armrests. It's airplane etiquette." "Right," I said. "But that doesn't include leaning into the other person's seat." She didn't respond. Just turned her face toward the shut window, and closed her eyes. About an hour later, when the food service started, the flight attendants came by with drinks. I got a ginger ale. She ordered 2 glasses of white wine, then she waved the flight attendant back. "Can I get a blanket? And some headphones? And maybe a better meal than this. I'm lactose intolerant." When told they didn't have alternate options, she rolled her eyes and said, "Fine. I'll just take hers," and pointed to my tray. The attendant looked horrified. "Ma'am, that's another passenger's meal." She shrugged. "She doesn't need it." I couldn't help it. I laughed. It just slipped out involuntarily. A sharp little burst of disbelief. She turned to me slowly. "Something funny?" "I just didn't expect to be robbed on a plane," I said. That got a few snickers from nearby passengers. She didn't like that. For the next 2 hours, she made a point of making my life miserable. She kicked my foot every time she crossed her legs, pretended she couldn't hear the flight attendant when asked to raise her seat for meals, and complained loudly to anyone who would listen about rude girls who think they own the sky. It was exhausting. When I got up to use the bathroom, she groaned like I'd asked her to move a mountain. By the time I came back, I realized she'd moved my book and headphones from the seat pocket to the floor. My jaw dropped. "Why did you touch my things?" I asked. "They were in my space," she said coolly. "I need leg room." At that point, I'd had it. I signaled for a flight attendant and quietly explained everything, how she'd taken my seat, hogged the space, and was now moving my stuff. The flight attendant looked sympathetic. "I'm so sorry. Unfortunately, the flight's full. But I'll make a note for the captain." "The captain?" I repeated. "Yes," she said with a knowing smile. "We take passenger harassment seriously." That's when I noticed something else. Several people around us were watching, recording even. And it hit me. This woman wasn't just rude. She was that passenger. The kind that ends up going viral for all the wrong reasons. I didn't know it yet, but karma was already boarding the plane, and it was sitting just a few rows behind her with Sebastian. I could tell Sebastian was trying to keep an eye on me. Every time I turned around, I caught him glancing over the seatbacks, his brow furrowed. He knew me well enough to recognize my I'm barely holding it together face. The rude passenger whose name I overheard later was Patricia seemed to feed on attention. When the flight attendants walked by, she'd suddenly get louder, sigh dramatically, or stretch her arms like she was auditioning for an airline commercial. At one point, she pressed the call button for the 3rd time in 20 minutes. "Yes, ma'am?" the attendant asked, his polite tone starting to thin. "This woman keeps bumping into me," she said, pointing at me. "I can't even relax with her flailing around." I froze. "What?" "I haven't moved in 20 minutes. The attendant's eyes flicked between us. He could tell who was lying, but professionalism glued his smile in place. "I'll make sure everyone keeps their arms inside their own seats," he said diplomatically. As he walked off, Patricia muttered, "Some people just can't handle long flights." It was like sitting next to a mosquito that insulted you. Every jab, every word, it didn't hurt enough to explode over, but it was relentless. Then, halfway across the Atlantic, we hit turbulence. The fasten seatbelt light came on. The plane shuddered lightly. Patricia immediately grabbed my arm and squealed, "Oh my gosh. Is this safe?" I tried to gently pull away. It's normal. Just turbulence. She didn't let go. You don't understand. I hate flying. So now she needed me. After 3 hours of treating me like a human armrest, she wanted comfort. I sighed and said softly, "We'll be fine. Planes are built for this." She squeezed my arm tighter and said, "You seem awfully calm for someone in economy. Maybe you're used to rough rides." I blinked. "Excuse me." Her lips twisted into a smug little smirk, and I realized she'd turned my attempt at kindness into another insult. When the turbulence passed, she released my arm, then said to the person sitting in the aisle seat, "You'd think people would have some class when traveling internationally." That was it, the final straw. I unbuckled my seatbelt and leaned towards her, just enough to speak without making a scene. "You need to stop talking about me. I've been patient for hours. This isn't okay." She smirked. "What are you going to do? Have me kicked off midair?" I didn't answer. I just turned toward the aisle and locked eyes with the head flight attendant. The young man from earlier must have told her what was happening because she approached us immediately. "Ladies," she said firmly, "I'm going to ask that you both remain courteous for the remainder of the flight. We've had multiple passenger complaints about this row." Patricia gasped. "Complaints? About me?" The attendant didn't flinch. "Yes, ma'am. And I'd like to remind you that disruptive behavior can have consequences upon landing." Patricia looked genuinely shocked, like she'd never been told no before. "This is absurd." "I'm the one being harassed." The attendant handed her a written warning notice. "Consider this your formal notice to adjust your behavior. If it continues, we will have security meet the plane when we land." The entire section of passengers went silent. You could feel the shift in the air. Someone even whispered, "Good." Patricia's mouth opened, then closed. She crumpled the paper in her hand and turned toward the window again, quiet for the first time all flight. I sat back, heart pounding. I didn't gloat, but I did feel some of the tension melt off my shoulders. For the next hour, she didn't say a word. No sighing, no commentary, no elbows. Just stiff silence and an occasional glare. Sebastian and I both bought the in-flight Wi-Fi and were messaging each other on an app. My phone lit up with his message. "You okay?" I nodded to myself. "She's been warned. I think she's done." I looked behind me at him and he was smiling at his phone. "Good, I was this close to trading seats and giving her a lecture." "Trust me," I said. "She's not worth it." I thought that would be the end of it, but the real drama. It hadn't even begun yet. About 2 hours before landing, the cabin lights brightened. People started waking up, stretching, and talking softly as breakfast trays came around. I was half asleep when Patricia suddenly sat upright, muttering angrily to herself. Then she pressed the call button again. The same head flight attendant arrived, looking wary. "Yes, ma'am?" "I'm missing my phone," Patricia snapped. "It was right here in my tote, and now it's gone." The attendant's expression softened. "I can help you look for it." "No, someone took it," she said, glaring directly at me. "She's been shuffling around with her bag. I saw her." I froze. "What?" "I haven't touched anything of yours." Passengers turned their heads. The gossip radar went off instantly. Sebastian was halfway up from his seat before the attendant held out a hand. "Let's stay calm. Ma'am, we'll check around the area before assuming anything." Patricia folded her arms. "Go ahead, it's probably in her bag." My jaw dropped. "You can look through my things if you want," I said, my voice shaking but confident. "Because I didn't take anything." The attendant nodded gratefully. "Thank you, ma'am." She knelt, checked under our seats, and within seconds said, "Ma'am, your phone's right here under your blanket." Patricia blinked. "That's impossible." The attendant interrupted gently. "It must have slipped when you reclined earlier." The look on Patricia's face was unforgettable. A mix of rage and embarrassment, like she couldn't decide whether to cry or shout. Then, unbelievably, she turned it back on me. "She probably put it there to make me look stupid." The entire cabin groaned audibly. One man across the aisle muttered, "Lady, give it a rest." Sebastian stood beside us now, calm but commanding. "Enough. You've harassed my girlfriend since before we even left the gate. You accused her of stealing. You've been rude to everyone in this row. You need to stop." The head attendant nodded. "Sir, we've got it handled, thank you." She turned to Patricia again. "Ma'am, I'm making a note in your passenger report. If you continue to disrupt others, we'll have airport security waiting at the gate." Patricia gasped like she'd been physically struck. "Security? For me? You can't be serious." The attendant didn't blink. "I am." A couple people actually clapped. The sound was soft and scattered, but it was validating. Patricia turned red, snatched her phone, and crossed her arms. "This is harassment. I'll have your job for this." The attendant smiled serenely. "You're welcome to contact customer relations." For the next hour, Patricia sat frozen, glaring at the seat back. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even sip her drink. Meanwhile, the rest of the cabin finally relaxed. I heard quiet conversations starting up again, laughter, the clink of cups. Sebastian messaged me one last time. "That's the sound of peace returning to the world." I laughed softly. "You're dramatic." "Only because I love you." He typed it was the calm before landing, and before Karma decided to make her final descent. Because Patricia wasn't done embarrassing herself, she just hadn't realized her audience was a lot bigger than she thought. The descent into Heathrow should have been smooth sailing or smooth flying, I guess. But Patricia had other plans. As soon as the landing announcement played, she started mumbling again. "Unbelievable service. I'll never fly this airline again. I'll make sure everyone hears about this." I ignored her. I just wanted to land, stretch my legs, and be done with this airborne nightmare. Sebastian met my eyes a few rows back and gave me that reassuring little grin that said, "It's almost over." But Patricia, apparently, couldn't handle being ignored. She turned to me and hissed, "You think you're so innocent, don't you? You humiliated me in front of everyone." I took a slow breath. "You humiliated yourself." That was the truth, and it clearly hit a nerve. Her nostrils flared. "People like you always play the victim. You think you're so special because you have a window seat and a boyfriend defending you. Well, guess what? People are laughing at you, not with you." I turned my face toward the window, refusing to give her the reaction she wanted. Then, I heard the unmistakable click of a camera phone. The man in the row behind us said calmly, "You might want to stop talking before you make things worse." Patricia snapped her head around. "Excuse me?" He held up his phone. "You've been acting like this for hours. I've got the whole thing recorded. The crew might need it." Her jaw fell open. "You can't record me, that's illegal." "It's not," said another passenger. "Not when you're being disruptive on a public flight." A ripple of quiet agreement moved through the cabin. Patricia looked around and realized, maybe for the first time, that she didn't have a single ally. She slumped back in her seat, fuming silently. When the plane finally touched down, the entire cabin exhaled in relief. But as soon as the seatbelt sign turned off, Patricia sprang up and started shoving past people to get her bag. "Ma'am," a flight attendant said, "please wait until your row is called." "I have connections," she said loudly, grabbing her tote. "I don't wait behind peasants." I swear, half the plane groaned in unison. Sebastian and I exchanged looks, half disbelief, half exhaustion. We stayed seated as she pushed her way into the aisle, muttering insults under her breath. Then came the voice over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We have an additional crew request for the front rows." I saw the head flight attendant walking up the aisle with two airport security officers waiting just outside the door. The attendant stopped at our row and said, "Miss Patricia Reynolds?" Patricia froze. "Yes?" "Security will be speaking with you before you deplane. Please gather your belongings and remain seated until instructed." Her face went white. "You can't be serious. This is ridiculous. The passengers around us?" Dead silent then. As the realization sank in that she was actually being escorted off, whispers started spreading. Someone behind us muttered, "She really did it to herself." And then, almost poetically, the same man who'd recorded earlier whispered to me, "It's already online." I blinked. "What?" He grinned. Someone in row 25 posted it to TikTok before we even landed. The whole thing. The seat fight, the accusations, the meltdown. It's blowing up. My stomach did a slow flip, not from fear, but disbelief. Patricia's tantrum was literally going viral in real time when the seatbelt sign dinged again. The officers motioned for her to stand. She tried to argue, her voice cracking, but they just nodded patiently, letting her rant about unfair treatment and false accusations. She stomped down the aisle, sunglasses on again like armor, while phones discreetly recorded her exit the moment she was out of sight. The cabin erupted into quiet cheers and relieved laughter. The head flight attendant turned to me and whispered, "You've been incredibly patient. Thank you for handling this with grace." I smiled weakly. "Just glad it's over." Sebastian squeezed my hand as we grabbed our things. "That was brutal," he murmured. "But you handled it like a pro." Little did we know, it wasn't over yet. Because by the time we got to baggage claim, Patricia's face was already trending on mine. We were standing by the carousel when Sebastian's phone buzzed. He looked down, frowned, and then started laughing. "Eleanor," he said, showing me the screen. "You need to see this." It was a TikTok. The caption read, "The rudest passenger I've ever seen." There she was, Patricia, clear as day, rolling her eyes, hogging the armrest, snapping at me, accusing me of stealing her phone, then being handed the warning notice. The video was perfectly edited, with text overlays like, "When you pick a fight with the wrong window seat." Within hours, it had over 1.2 million views. Sebastian couldn't stop laughing. Read the comments. They were brutal. "The girl in the window seat deserves a medal. Flight attendants are saints. This woman takes main character syndrome to a whole new level." I tried not to smile, but I couldn't help it. It wasn't that I wanted her to be humiliated, but after everything she did, seeing her behavior finally have consequences felt poetic. A few hours later, as we got to Sebastian's sister's flat, my phone started buzzing too. The airline's official account had actually commented under the video, "Thank you to the passengers who remained calm and respectful. Our crews work hard to ensure everyone's safety and comfort." And then, unbelievably, another update hit. Someone had recognized Patricia. Apparently, she was a local influencer who often posted about luxury travel experiences. Her latest post, deleted, her comments flooded with people asking about the flight incident. By that evening, multiple news accounts had reposted the video. Headlines like, "Plane passenger's meltdown goes viral after false accusation," and entitled, "Traveler escorted off flight," started trending. Sebastian looked up from his phone, wide-eyed. "You're on CNN's front page." I repeat, "You're on CNN's front page." I laughed until my stomach hurt. No way, this is surreal. A few days later, the airline reached out directly. They thanked me for handling the situation professionally and offered Sebastian and me 2 complimentary round-trip tickets as a gesture of appreciation. I nearly cried. Patricia, meanwhile, posted a public apology video. Well, kind of. It was the classic influencer-style non-apology. I was under stress. Things were taken out of context. People don't understand how mean others can be to women traveling alone. But the internet wasn't buying it. Comments flooded in with timestamps of her exact words and actions. She deleted the video within a day, and that was that. A few months later, when Sebastian and I took our next flight, this time to Greece, I was recognized by a flight attendant. She smiled and said, "You're the girl from the TikTok, right? The one who stayed calm while that lady lost her mind?" I nodded, embarrassed. She grinned. "We all saw that video in crew training. You're a legend." Sebastian whispered proudly, "Told you you're famous." Karma really is a beautiful thing.